Hello, friends. I hope that you can't hear the big noisy machine next door as well as I can. I can hear it a lot. So my hope is that you can still hear me read you a story today. So the book I'm going to read you is called Flowers Are Calling. And this book is all about pollinators, which are the creatures that help us create new plants by spreading the pollen from one plant to another so that they can create new seeds. So one of the reasons I like this book is because it's a rhyming book. And the other reason is because it has beautiful illustrations. And the last reason is because it teaches me about a lot of pollinators that I didn't know were pollinators. It gives us some different kinds of information about different plants as well. So, The Flowers Are Calling. The words are written by Rita Gray. She's the author, and the illustrator is Kennard Pack. And the illustrations are really beautiful. I'm going to try and make sure that you get to see them. So, here's our title page. The Flowers Are Calling. Flowers are calling a little black bear. No, not a bear. He doesn't care. They're calling a butterfly to dip from the air. So, that's not a pollinator, but that is, right? Flowers are calling a wet green frog. No, not a frog. She likes her soggy bog. They're calling a bumblebee to look near their log. See the flowers? Flowers are calling a porcupine. No, not a porcupine. She wouldn't take the time. They're calling a hummingbird to sip at their vine. Okay, and this part gives information about the different flowers. So this flower is called Queen Anne's lace, and butterflies like landing pads where they can drink their nectar on Queen Anne's lace. This flower is called monkshood, and bumblebees are hefty enough to push deep inside a monkshood flower where nectar is stored. So see how deep that flower is? This is a trumpet honeysuckle, and hummingbirds use their long tongues to reach the nectar hidden in deep tubular flowers and hover as they drink. So each of those pollinators works really well with those flowers. Flowers are calling a loud blue jay. No, not a jay. He wouldn't stay. They're calling a honeybee to fly their way. Flowers are calling a little moose. Here he is. He's over on this side. No, not a moose. What would be the use? They're calling a beetle. Is it a beetle? To eat their pollen loose. So that's one of the animals that I didn't know was a pollinator. Did you guys know that beetles were pollinators? I didn't know. Flowers are calling a rabbit to stop. No, not a rabbit. It's not their habit to call a rabbit. He might grab it. They're calling a bee fly to visit their spot. So that's a bee fly. Didn't know that was a insect. Was not aware. All right, so here's the flowers that we learned about. Apple tree blossom. Honeybees help make many of the fruits, nuts, and vegetables we eat by pollinating fruit tree blossoms such as the apple tree. There are also thousands of varieties of wild bees that help to make many of the foods we eat. This is a magnolia. This tree is one of the earliest spring trees to grow blossoms. Beetles have been visiting flowers for more than 100 million years. And this one down here, this is the violet. Bee flies look like bumblebees, but have 2 wings instead of 4. Like hummingbirds, they are able to hover their furry bodies in the air as they drink the nectar. Flowers are calling a small brown snake. No, not a snake, for goodness sake. They're calling a pollen wasp with nectar to take. Flowers are calling a fat raccoon. No, not a raccoon. He doesn't care for white bloom or sweet perfume. They're calling a moth in the light of the moon. Flowers are calling a desert deer. No, not a deer. He can't even get near. They're calling a nectar bat to flap over here. See the nectar bat? Okay, here's where we learn about the flowers. Blowout beard tongue. Now that is a funny name. Pollen wasps, like bees, make loaves of nectar and pollen to feed their young. See, I didn't know that. Here we've got a carden cactus, these background cactuses. Lesser long-nosed bats have long tongues that can reach the nectar deep inside the bell-shaped flowers of the carden cactus. These cactus flowers unfurl for just one short night. So these are the flowers of the carden cactus. The moonflower and Carolina sphinx moth. So that was the moth. Sphinx moths are expert flyers with very long tongues. Like carden cactus, the bloom of moonflowers open for just one night and depend on the nighttime visits of moths for pollination. So these flowers only bloom at night. They're called moonflowers. Flowers are calling a busy wren. No, not a wren. He's already seen them. They're calling some children to look again. Okay, and here's some information in this book. So it says, look at a flower, what do you see? So the first thing you might see is color. Flowers that have daytime visitors tend to have bright colors so they can be easily found among all the green foliage, which is another word for leaves. Flowers with nighttime visitors tend to be pale with a very sweet smell, making them easier to locate in the dark. Many insects can't see the color red and are instead drawn to yellows and blues. So that's why you might see flowers of those colors. Another thing to look for is the pattern. Many flowers use designs to help the pollinators find nectar right away. These designs are called nectar guides. How is the middle of your flower different from its outer parts? Would these differences help a pollinator find nectar? So if you look at the middles versus the outside of the flower, how are they different, and would they help a pollinator find the pollen? And then there is the shape. The shape of a flower can tell you who might come to visit. Hummingbirds can reach deep inside long, thin flowers, but honeybees have rather short tongues. They need their nectar served in shallow golden bowls, like those of the apple blossoms. Bumblebees are rather heavy and need strong flowers that can hold their heft. Is your flower a tight cluster of many small blossoms, such as Queen Anne's lace or dandelion? Then it will be good for all those insects that like a sturdy perch. Then there's the smell of a flower. Does your flower smell sweet or musky? Musky is sort of like the smell of dirt might be musky smelling. Does it have any smell at all? Bees like sweet smells, and beetles like fruity, spicy scents. Night active moths love flowers as fragrant as perfume. nectar bats like musky smells, and some flies like rotten smells. Birds and butterflies use their eyes to find flowers instead of their sense of smell. And then the last thing to consider when you're looking at a flower is the time of opening. Does your flower open in the daytime or the nighttime? If it is a night bloomer, it is calling to a night moth or nectar bat. Day bloomers are calling to birds and insects who find food in the sunshine. And there is a whole bunch of information about pollinators. We're going to read another book about specifically about bees, but I hope you guys learned some interesting information about flowers and the pollinators that help them.